There are wars you read about in history books, battles etched into stone memorials, and campaigns debated endlessly in classrooms and newsrooms alike. But then, there are the wars that never happened, rehearsed in silence, mapped in secret, and buried in classified documents stamped for eyes only. These are the hidden war drills of NATO, the alliance that has quietly trained for scenarios most civilians could not even imagine. When most people think of NATO, they picture political summits, polished speeches, and broad declarations about peace and collective defense. Yet behind the cameras and the carefully crafted messages, another world exists. A world of sprawling training grounds, underground bunkers, and digital command rooms where simulations of the next global war play out in chilling detail. These exercises are not designed for publicity, they are designed for survival. And for decades they've been running in the shadows. Few outside military circles realize the sheer scale of these drills. Thousands of troops, fleets of aircraft, naval armadas, cyber units, and even space assets are mobilized to test scenarios ranging from nuclear exchange to cyber blackouts. Some exercises are public, displayed proudly as shows of unity, but others remain shrouded in secrecy, kept hidden from the populations whose lives would be most affected if these scenarios ever came true. Why so secret? Because many of these war games explore situations too politically explosive to discuss openly. What happens if a NATO ally is overrun in 72 hours? What if Russia or China launches a preemptive cyber strike that disables power grids across Europe? What if a nuclear weapon detonates on NATO soil? These are the questions asked in simulation after simulation. Questions that leave no room for public debate, only classified answers. And while leaders reassure citizens that NATO exists to preserve peace, these hidden exercises reveal a far darker truth. Peace is only preserved because war is constantly rehearsed. In these rehearsals, alliances are tested, strategies are refined, and entire nations are reduced to colored pieces on a digital map, moved and sacrificed for the sake of readiness. Most of us will never see the orders, the maps, or the classified after-action reports. But make no mistake, the drills are real and they are happening right now. This is the secret face of NATO, and in this series, we pull back the curtain on the war games you were never meant to see. Beneath ordinary-looking buildings across Europe, behind thick concrete and steel, lie the nerve centers of NATO's most secretive operations. They are war rooms without windows, their walls lined with glowing digital maps, communication terminals, and encrypted monitors displaying movements of forces that exist only in simulation. For now, these command hubs are where the alliance practices for the unthinkable. In these rooms, generals and strategists sit around vast tables, their voices low but urgent, their eyes fixed on scenarios projected across walls like cinematic battle plans. Every color-coded marker on the map represents thousands of troops, squadrons of jets, or fleets of naval vessels. With a few keystrokes, entire divisions are moved, supply chains rerouted, and nations plunged into hypothetical chaos. To outsiders it might resemble a game, but for those inside it is rehearsal for survival. These exercises are meticulously structured. Some begin with a cyber strike that takes down European power grids, forcing NATO to decide how quickly to escalate without triggering nuclear retaliation. Others simulate sudden invasions of the Baltics, where NATO forces must respond to overwhelming attacks designed to test the limits of the alliance. As fabled Article 5, the clause that declares an attack on one member an attack on all. Each decision is monitored, logged, and scrutinized by analysts who later dissect every delay, every misstep, every sign of weakness. And then there are the black drills, the scenarios too sensitive to be discussed outside classified circles. In these war games, the maps are marked with red zones that represent nuclear fallout, chemical contamination, or entire cities lost in the opening hours of conflict. These drills don't appear in press releases. They aren't announced to the public. To acknowledge them would be to admit how fragile peace truly is. The war rooms are not just physical spaces, but digital networks linking command centers from Washington to Brussels, from London to Warsaw. Secure satellites beam data across continents, allowing commanders separated by oceans to act as though they are seated at the same table. It is a demonstration of unity, but also a stark reminder of how easily modern warfare could erupt into a truly global event. To NATO insiders, these rehearsals are essential. To the rest of the world, they are invisible. And in that invisibility lies the unsettling truth. While we live ordinary lives above ground, beneath our feet, the future of war is being tested, planned, and prepared for. The war games most people know about are the ones NATO shows to the world. Tanks rolling through muddy fields, fighter jets roaring across the sky, soldiers practicing beach landings under the cameras of invited journalists. But those are the public drills, the theater, the real training, the secret exercises you were never meant to see. Focus on scenarios far more terrifying: nuclear strikes, cyber warfare, and the weaponization of space. In nuclear drills, entire cities vanish from the maps in seconds. Red circles bloom across the projection screens, representing fireballs hotter than the surface of the sun, shockwaves flattening buildings, fallout clouds drifting silently with the wind. Commanders must decide who lives, who dies, and whether to retaliate, and with what scale of destruction. These are not abstract games. They are simulations of how NATO would respond if the unthinkable happened. If a nuclear exchange with Russia or another adversary turned theory into ash, then there are the cyber drills. Unlike the roar of jets or the rumble of tanks, cyber war begins in silence. NATO's hidden simulations test what happens when every bank account freezes, when electricity grids fail, when satellites go dark, and when entire populations panic in the digital blackout. Analysts know the truth. A well-timed cyber strike could collapse societies without a single bullet fired. For that reason, NATO's cyber exercises are cloaked in secrecy, often conducted in secure facilities with no phones, no internet access, and no leaks. And above the Earth, another battlefield is rehearsed space. Satellites guide missiles, track troops, and keep global communication alive. In NATO's secret space war drills, networks of satellites are blinded, destroyed, or hijacked, leaving commanders scrambling in the dark. These scenarios test whether NATO can fight in a world where the digital eyes and ears of modern warfare have been ripped away. None of these drills appear in official press briefings. They are not meant to reassure the public. They are meant to prepare leaders for the day when silence ends and the drills turn real. For the generals, NATO's secret war drills are about strategy, command, and the movement of forces across digital maps. But for the soldiers who carry out the orders, the experience is visceral. They are the ones tasked with turning simulations into action, stepping into training zones that are designed to feel as close to real war as possible. On a foggy training ground in Eastern Europe, soldiers practice what it would mean to hold a defensive line against overwhelming odds. Explosions echo across the landscape, smoke rises in plumes, and drones buzz overhead as mock enemy units press forward. For the men and women in the trenches, the drill isn't abstract. It is a living rehearsal of a nightmare they hope never to see. Many of these drills blur the line between reality and simulation. Soldiers wear full chemical suits while practicing under conditions that simulate radiation exposure or biological contamination. They march through blackout zones where communication is cut, forcing them to navigate without digital maps or satellite guidance. They drill evacuation scenarios in bombed-out towns reconstructed for training, carrying mannequins that represent wounded civilians, knowing full well that if war ever came, the figures would be real people. For cyber units, the battlefield looks different. They spend sleepless nights in sealed rooms staring at cascading lines of code, fending off simulated attacks on financial systems, hospitals, and airports. For them, the weapon is not a rifle but a keyboard, yet the stakes are no less deadly. Psychologists often monitor these exercises, watching how soldiers respond under crushing stress. How long can they function without sleep? How do they react when told their unit has suffered catastrophic losses? These stress tests aren't cruelty. They are conditioning, training the mind as much as the body. And yet, ask the soldiers themselves, and many will admit an uneasy truth. The drills sometimes feel too real. The weight of the scenarios lingers long after the exercise ends. In the back of their minds, they know these are not just games. They are rehearsals for a war that could erupt tomorrow, a war they may be ordered to fight for real. Why does NATO keep so many of its war drills out of public view? The answer lies in politics and perception. On one hand, the alliance must prepare for the most extreme scenarios imaginable. On the other, it must avoid sparking panic among its citizens or provoking adversaries into escalation. Walking that line is a balancing act as delicate as any battlefield maneuver. If NATO announced openly that it was rehearsing for nuclear strikes, cyber shutdowns, or the collapse of entire cities, the headlines would ignite fear overnight. Markets could tumble, citizens might demand answers, and rivals like Russia or China would seize the narrative to accuse NATO of warmongering. So instead, the alliance shows the world only what it wants seen. Drills of soldiers working together, tanks maneuvering in neat formations, jets flying in tight photogenic arcs across the sky. The real terrifying scenarios stay buried in classified files. There is also the matter of deterrence. If adversaries knew every detail of NATO's hidden drills, they could adapt, plan countermeasures, and exploit weaknesses. By keeping the specifics secret, NATO preserves uncertainty, a powerful weapon in itself. Opponents can only guess how the alliance might respond in a crisis, and that doubt serves as a silent shield. Yet secrecy comes with risks of its own. Citizens in NATO countries rarely realize just how close their governments believe war might be. Political leaders prefer reassurance, speeches about peace, unity, and stability. But behind closed doors, planners know that one miscalculation, one stray missile, one misread signal could set events in motion that no one can stop. To admit this openly would shatter the illusion of security most societies depend on. This is the tightrope NATO walks every day, preparing for wars that praise never come, while convincing the public that peace will hold. The truth lies somewhere in between, in drills too sensitive to reveal, in plans too dangerous to discuss, and in simulations you were never meant to see. If the drills of NATO prove anything, It is that the Alliance does not take peace for granted. Every classified simulation, every hidden exercise, is built on the sobering assumption that war is not a relic of the past, but a shadow of the future. The enemies may change, the technology may evolve, but the principle remains. Prepare for the worst so that, perhaps, it never arrives. The scenarios rehearsed behind closed doors reveal a chilling picture of the wars to come. They will not unfold like the conflicts of old, where armies clashed on distant battlefields while civilians watched from afar. Instead, the next great war would come home instantly. Cities plunged into darkness by cyberattacks, satellites crippled, silencing navigation and communication, supply chains collapsing overnight, nuclear detonations that turn millions into refugees in a single flash. These are the futures NATO esdrils confront. Futures its leaders hope never see the light of day. And yet, the very act of rehearsing them raises questions. By preparing so intently for conflict, does NATO increase the likelihood of it happening? By training for nuclear exchanges, does it normalize the idea that they are survivable? By wargaming cyberstrikes, does it encourage adversaries to escalate in kind? These are questions the public rarely hears, because the public is rarely invited to know that drills exist in the first place. Still, secrecy has its purpose. If these exercises remain invisible, it is not only to protect strategy, but also to shield societies from fear. To reveal them openly would be to remind every citizen how fragile peace truly is, how quickly order can shatter, and how close humanity always stands to the edge of chaos. NATO's hidden war games are not meant to reassure. They are meant to warn, to those inside the command bunkers. The message is clear. The world of tomorrow will be more dangerous, more unpredictable, and more explosive than the world we know today. And whether we see them or not, the rehearsals continue. The question that lingers is not if these drills will ever become reality, but when. And when that day comes, the battles we were never meant to see will shape the future we cannot avoid.